Warning, this episode may contain disturbing content, soothing narration, and mild existential dread. Basically, murder ASMR for stressed professionals. Listener discretion is advised. Hell, it might be necessary.
Oh, what a wicked and tangled web Sarah Hartsfield wove. If her life were a novel, you'd call it unbelievable, over the top, too far-fetched for even the wildest fiction. But it wasn't fiction. And this week we're going back to the beginning, to every person, every place, every fire, every lie, to show you exactly who got caught in her web. Because before there was a murder charge laid at her feet, before Chambers County issued her arrest warrant, before Joe's blood sugar alarm screamed in vain for nearly 2 hours while Sarah busied herself texting, ordering groceries, and doing anything except calling 911, before she promised to love him forever, there was an FBI investigation into a murder plot. There was a man dead from a gunshot wound, a wound Sarah admitted she had inflicted. There was a fake pregnancy. There was a fire that burned one of her family members' homes to the ground, and another fire that burned a lover's home. And then there was the fire that almost was, because Sarah was allegedly caught red-handed trying to ignite it, but somehow she was never charged. How does a woman with this many criminal touchpoints escape accountability for so long? And how did police finally begin to unravel the truth? Well, it turns out law enforcement did not untangle this web alone. Sarah Hartsfield's undoing came from the very same place she turned for comfort while Joe lay dying beside her. Facebook. When a local news outlet posted the headline about her arrest, people who knew Sarah from across the country started sharing it, commenting, tagging friends, sharing their stories and warnings. It seems that everyone that knew Sarah had something to tell, and none of them seemed surprised that she'd been arrested for murder. Not just Texans, people from Missouri, Virginia, Alaska, Minnesota, and more. Because Sarah never stayed in one place very long, but everywhere she went, one thing stayed the same. Anyone who crossed Sarah Hartsfield saw a very different version of her than she presented to the public, a version that terrified them, a spiteful and sinister side, a streak of something dark enough that, in hindsight, everyone recognized it for what it was, the making of a sociopath. Today, we're taking you back to the beginning, to Sarah's childhood, to the ignored red flags, to the escalating violence, and to the victims she left behind, allegedly. This is part 2 of Burn, Marry, Kill, The Wicked Web of Sarah Hartsfield, right now on Crime to Burn. Welcome to Crime to Burn, where we explore the dark, sooty landscape where true crime intersects with arson and criminal negligence. Join us as we sift through the ashes to bring you the story of what really happened. Welcome back to Crime to Burn. I'm April, a fire protection engineer, former firefighter, woman who thought I'd seen some things, and then Sarah Hartsfield walked into my research like the final boss of bad decisions.
And I'm that guy you're pretty sure you saw somewhere else.
You can listen to this episode ad-free on Patreon, where you can join us at the Sacred Snack Table to enjoy unhinged bonus content and help us cover the absolutely absurd cost of court records. Click the link in the show notes to be transported into the Cool Kids cult and be blessed with ad-free episodes. We've got a new Cult of Steve newsletter coming out this month and a full-length bonus episode planned for Patreon, and trust me, you are not going to want to miss it. Also, I need to fork over roughly half a mortgage payment for upcoming court documents, so anything you contribute helps keep our research top tier and our sanity hanging on by a thread. But if you're not in a place to support us financially, that is completely okay, because we will always be free on your favorite podcast platform, and you can still help us grow, because here's the truth. I cannot afford a PR team. So we find new listeners the old-fashioned way, by you telling your friends, family, coworkers, and random strangers that have good tastes in podcasts. You can also help by following us on social media, liking, commenting, sharing, and tagging your unsuspecting future cult members. Even better, leave us a 5-star rating wherever you listen. We are absolutely killing it on Podbean, but getting the same momentum on Spotify and Apple Podcasts depends entirely on you. Because here's the thing. The algorithm will not promote a show without fresh ratings and engagement, And right now, our Apple and Spotify ratings have been stalled since August. Yet over 1,500 of you tune in every month. So I humbly beg you, do the thing. It is free, it helps us more than you know, and anecdotal evidence suggests it will immediately make you more attractive. To us. By a lot.
It makes your booty smoking.
If you want to share feedback, case suggestions, fire stories, or pictures of your dog, email us at crimetoburn@gmail.com. And a special shout out to David and Brooke. David sent a fantastic deep dive response to last week's episode, and Brooke reached out to get some help with research on a case she's writing a paper about that we covered a while back. I love hearing from you all, and so thank you for the pings. And one last thing before we get going, the holidays are coming, which means it's time to panic buy gifts for people you only see once a year. Luckily, our spread shop has something for everyone on your list. Nothing will alarm your friends and family more than discovering you spend your free time studying arson cases. And now you can advertise that fact proudly on a t-shirt, sticker, hoodie, or mug. And while you're shopping for other people, don't forget the most important person in your life, you. Treat yourself. You deserve it, especially after surviving this episode. The link is in the show notes. Now, let's get back to the final boss of bad decisions. And no, I am not talking about my brilliant idea to run a research-heavy podcast while also working a full-time engineering job. I'm talking about a woman people thought they knew. A woman many people loved right up until she scared the absolute crap out of them. But Sarah Hartsfield's history spans over 4 decades of what the cheeks did I just read moments, and we're going to start right at the beginning. Because while nothing in her past excuses what happened to Jo Hartsfield or any of the other crimes she's alleged to have committed or been involved in, it does give us context. And the truth is, Sarah may have had help becoming the monster prosecutors say that she was. And here's where we pause for a disclaimer and trigger warning. Sarah Hartsfield has only been found guilty in connection with Jo Hartsfield's death. Everything else we are discussing today is alleged. There is not enough evidence at this time to definitively tie her to any of the other crimes we're going to be talking about. But taken together, these incidents paint a very unsettling picture, because I think you'd be hard-pressed to find another woman who seems to leave behind such a consistent trail of chaos. And because we're going to talk about Sarah's childhood today, please listen with caution. There will be themes of child abuse and sexual abuse discussed. So Sarah was born in 1975, the only daughter among 4 children, 3 boys, 1 girl. And while digging into her early life is incredibly difficult, 2 themes kept surfacing from her brother Cody's interviews and from people who knew the family growing up. First, her father was abusive, not occasionally and not situationally, consistently and by multiple accounts violently. Dateline later described the family as a, quote, dynasty of dysfunction, suggesting that the trauma these kids endured was not new at all, but something that had been passed down through the generations. And second, the abuse wasn't distributed evenly. The boys were allegedly the targets of frequent physical beatings. Sarah was spared from that particular brutality, enduring something far worse, a different kind of trauma at the hands of the one person who should have protected her. Her father, Thomas Smith. The humiliation she suffered wasn't the kind that leaves bruises. It leaves scars that you can't see. The kind that shape a child's future in ways that echo through every relationship, every decision, and every disaster that follows. Now, Sarah's mother eventually kicked Thomas Smith out of the home, and then she remarried. But her new husband, Richard, had recently been released from prison after serving time for a murder that stemmed from a love triangle, one that left a man dead from a shotgun blast. But the alleged abuse didn't end there. When Sarah accused her stepfather of the same kind of abuse that she says she endured at the hands of her biological father, her oldest brother Cody said he didn't believe her. He claimed that he saw what was happening in the home, and yes, Sarah was telling the truth about her father, but about her stepfather, he said Sarah was lying. Now, Richard was brought to trial accused of molesting Sarah, and he was ultimately acquitted. But regardless of the verdict, Sarah said that she no longer felt safe at home, and she asked to be placed in foster care. Her foster mother told Dateline that Sarah's mother unceremoniously dropped her off with Child Protective Services, claiming to them that Sarah was just out of control. Whatever the truth is, one thing is clear. Sarah's childhood was defined not by safety or stability, but by trauma and the sense that no adult in her life was willing or able to protect her. But that's when everything changed for Sarah. At just 12 years old, Sarah won what I can only describe as the foster care lottery. She was placed with a family who genuinely wanted her, a family who wrapped her in the kind of stability and affection she had never experienced before. They were loving, they were present, and they did the work. They took Sarah to therapy. She was treated as a full member of a tight-knit family who spent their weekends at their lake house, was full of boat rides, barbecues, friends, sunshine, and normalcy. And she finally had what every child deserves: safety. And those bonds weren't temporary. Her foster father walked her down the aisle at her first wedding. Her children knew her foster family as their grandparents. Sarah stayed in very close touch with them long into adulthood. One of Sarah's childhood neighbors even told interviewers that she was jealous of the life Sarah seemed to have with her foster family. She was loved like their own, and she was wanted, and she was chosen. It could have been the start of a beautiful redemption arc for Sarah. It should have been. But even in the middle of this new, healthy environment, Sarah was already starting to show red flags. Behaviors her foster family hoped they could help her heal through time, support, and therapy. Sarah's foster mother remembered that when Sarah got angry, she never yelled. She would slam doors occasionally, but she didn't scream, and she was never openly disrespectful. She would go quiet. She would stare you down with a cold, controlled stillness, and then retreat to her room and wrap herself in a kind of quiet anger that somehow felt heavier than any tantrum. There was only one time Sarah ever truly lashed out at her foster family over a punishment that she thought was unfair. In that moment of anger, she told her foster mother that she'd feel differently if she saw the way her husband touched Sarah when she wasn't home. Her foster mother recognized the tactic instantly. She told investigators that she'd seen this before, the kind of accusation an abused child will sometimes level when they're cornered, hurting, or trying to wound someone who truly cares for them. And she shut it down immediately. She told Sarah in no uncertain terms that Sarah had tried those same lies before, and that kind of behavior was not happening in their home. Sarah never repeated the accusation again. Sarah's childhood friends also knew about the abuse she had endured, at least the version of it she chose to share with them. But they told investigators something important. Her story was always changing. Details shifted from one telling to the next, and her facts would contradict each other. They were never quite sure when she was telling the truth, when she was embellishing, or when she was just trying out a new version of events to see how it would land. It was another red flag, one that went completely unchecked. After all, she was in therapy and she was with a loving family. She should have been working through her trauma. But instead of healing, Sarah seemed to be learning something else. How to bend a story, how to manipulate sympathy, how to blur the lines between truth and fiction until even the people closest to her couldn't tell which was which. Then, at 15 years old, Sarah experienced another tragedy, one that would ripple through her life for decades. One of her brothers died under circumstances that were officially ruled accidental, but were unsettling enough that police made note of them. According to the incident report, her brother had been on the front porch of the home where he lived with his mother and siblings. He was playing with a dog leash, which he wrapped around his neck, and then allegedly slipped or fell from the porch. The leash caught something, strangling him. His mother found him, but investigators estimated that he'd been hanging there for 10 to 20 minutes, and there was nothing that could be done. Sarah's childhood friends later said that she was devastated by the loss. They were just kids themselves, and they didn't know how to support a friend navigating that level of grief. And yet, even as they tried to help her cope, the official investigation took a slightly darker tone. Police noted something about the scene felt off. But Sarah's mother seemed to show no emotion when the officers arrived. Whether that was shock or detachment, no one could say. And while investigators considered the death suspicious, they ultimately found no evidence of foul play and the case was closed. More than 30 years later, after Sarah's arrest for the murder of Joe Hartsfield, investigators reportedly took another look at her brother's death. But again, nothing suggested the case should be reopened. Now, it's worth noting that at the time of her brother's death, Sarah was living with a foster family, and I couldn't find any public record to suggest that she had any kind of regular contact with her siblings then, nor whether or not she lived close enough to even have been present. But some people online have tried to connect the dots that simply just aren't there. But the facts don't support the idea that Sarah had anything to do with it. But what is clear is that yet another trauma added to the pile that Sarah was already trying to carry. And when you consider how children make sense of the world and of danger, it's not unreasonable to think that this loss, combined with everything else she'd lived through, may have influenced her worldview, and maybe even taught her lessons about how deeply, or not, investigators dig when dealing with suspicious deaths. That last part is speculation on my part and not evidence. But the tragedy itself is well documented, and it is impossible to ignore the impact that it might have had on a girl who had already endured more than most adults ever will have to. While Sarah may have been quietly unraveling under the weight of her brother's death, she was also, perhaps desperately, searching for something that felt like control, comfort, or maybe connection. And that search earned her a bit of a reputation. According to one of her high school friends, Sarah became the wild girl. Not wild in the party animal sense as much as wild in the attention sense. She knew how to get boys to notice her, and she knew how to hold their gaze. And she seemed to need that attention in a way that felt different from other girls their age. To her classmates, it looked like confidence. To others, it might have looked like acting out. But viewed through the lens of her trauma, it's not hard to imagine a teenager trying to reclaim a sense of power in the only way she knew how, by controlling who wanted her, who pursued her, and who she would let get close. It was the beginning of a pattern that would follow Sarah into adulthood, the belief that love, desire, and attention were currency, and that she was willing to spend, trade, or manipulate that currency when it suited her. And then Sarah met Titus Knernscheld, and she decided to make an investment. Now, Titus remembers Sarah as sweet, attentive, caring, and so much fun. She was the kind of girl who made you feel like you were privileged just to have her attention, and he fell very hard and very fast. But over time, Titus said something began to shift. Where Sarah had once been caring, she started to become controlling. Arguments started to spark more often, and tension hung in their relationship like humidity at times. But still, Titus was in love, and love makes you overlook a lot of things that you maybe shouldn't. So in 1993, shortly after Sarah graduated from high school, her foster dad walked her down the aisle at just 18 years old, and she became Mrs. Knernscheld. With limited options to support his very young family, Titus joined the military not long after the wedding, and Sarah should have been at home awaiting her husband's return.
I bet that pissed off a lot of drill sergeants.
Knernscheld?
Yeah, having to say that. They probably had a nickname for him.
Real fast. But according to people who knew her back then, Sarah couldn't stand to be without attention for very long. And while Titus was away serving his country, she began seeking that attention in all the wrong places. When Titus finally came home, Sarah was pregnant, and the town rumor mill was roaring. Friends, acquaintances, even people Titus barely knew were pulling him aside to whisper that the baby wasn't his. And then came the moment that broke him. One man directly told Titus that he was the baby's father. Now by then, Titus was already recognizing that this marriage had been a mistake, and tragically, Sarah lost the baby in a miscarriage. But instead of bringing them closer, Titus took it as his chance to get out, and he filed for divorce. But Sarah wasn't single for long. In fact, she barely touched the ground before her next marriage. Because almost immediately after divorcing Titus, Sarah remarried. This time, she married Titus's best friend. The kind of twist that makes small Midwestern towns lose their collective minds. But Titus wasn't going to be free of Sarah quite so easily. He couldn't have known that leaving her on his own terms would ignite a rage in Sarah that would escalate into terrifying proportions. Because if there was one pattern emerging even this early in her life, it was this. Sarah did not tolerate abandonment. Not from her family and not from her friends, and definitely not from the men that she believed belonged to her. And Titus's divorce, his walking away, was an unforgivable sin. What came next seemed like the kind of retaliation that you would expect in a made-for-TV drama, a vengeance so extreme it would ultimately culminate in an alleged attempted felony. When Titus met the woman who would eventually become his second wife, something in Sarah seemed to snap. Witnesses later told investigators that Sarah would unleash a level of fury that felt wildly disproportionate, even for a bitter ex. She verbally tore into the couple every chance she got, zeroing in on Titus's new love interest with a venom that made bystanders uncomfortable. And then the vandalism started. Slashed tires, laundry detergent poured in the gas tank, profanity carved straight into the paint of Titus's girlfriend's car. Titus and his girlfriend went to police over and over begging for help. They were terrified of how fast things were escalating and desperate for someone, anyone, to intervene before Sarah took things to the next level. But when officers questioned Sarah, the young, doe-eyed, dangerously persuasive version of Sarah showed up. The Sarah who looked like the picture of innocence. The Sarah who could weaponize vulnerability like it was a superpower. And she flipped the script. To police, she portrayed herself, not as the aggressor, but as the victim. A young, frightened woman supposedly being tormented by Titus and his new girlfriend, and it worked. Authorities seemed to swallow every word she served them politely, like they were sitting at a dinner table, neatly cutting into the absolute bullshit fillet she was feeding them, knife and fork in hand. Meanwhile, Titus was watching his life spiral, feeling both terrified and incredulous. He felt the attacks were escalating, and he was worried about how far she'd go. And the answer to that question was about to come roaring to life. All of this is according to Titus and his girlfriend, who's now his wife. Dateline allegedly tried to get records from the incident that I'm about to tell you about, but they were told that the records no longer existed. Titus and his girlfriend were babysitting for an acquaintance one night, just doing a favor, watching their friend's child while the friend worked an overnight shift. The child was asleep in the next room and the house was quiet, and Titus and his girlfriend were settled on the couch when she noticed something odd. A smell. Gasoline. At first, she thought maybe it was coming from outside, maybe a leaking vehicle, maybe something spilled in the driveway. And as she walked toward the front of the house, the odor grew stronger and thicker and unmistakable. She called for Titus, and they stepped outside, and nothing was wrong with the car as she had feared. But the realization was much worse. Gasoline splashed across the entire front of the home, and the smell was overwhelming. And a figure was sprinting away into the dark, a figure they recognized. Sarah. Not a shadowy stranger and not a prankster teenager, not a burglar. It was Sarah. She had allegedly doused the front of an occupied home with a sleeping child inside and bolted when she realized she was no longer alone. Titus went straight to the police, furious and terrified, and the response he got was so outrageous it almost defies belief. They didn't arrest Sarah. They didn't even bring her in for questioning. They didn't treat this as a threat or a warning or a crime in progress. According to Titus, they told him, there's no such thing as attempted arson. Either she committed arson or she didn't. Let's pause for a second. A woman allegedly pours gasoline all over the front of a house with people inside, and because she didn't get the chance to drop the match, police just shrugged. No crime, no follow-up, no protection for the people she was terrorizing.
My goodness, criminals are scary, and you don't want to put police in danger because that's not their job.
Right,
to be in danger for the people, so.
Yeah, a teenage girl. It's terrifying.
It's better if they just direct traffic and hand out citations.
Well, at least the cops were safe.
Mark safe.
Just a bureaucratic shoulder shrug in the face of a nearly lit fuse. But soon, Sarah's attention was elsewhere, or maybe, just maybe, she'd come too close to getting caught. Whatever the reason, Titus and his girlfriend eventually married, and the harassment tapered off. Now, I want to be transparent about something here. The exact order of events in this chapter of Sarah's life is a little murky. I don't actually know whether her relationship and eventual marriage to Titus's best friend pulled her attention away from tormenting Titus and his girlfriend, now wife, or whether she was in a relationship with or married to that second husband while she was harassing them. But here's what the rumor mill reported. That second marriage, it fell apart almost exactly the way the first one did. Sarah was allegedly unfaithful and the relationship crumbled. And once again, Sarah found herself with limited options, little support, and a rapidly burning bridge smoldering behind her in a very small town. I have to assume that by this point, Sarah's reputation had started limiting her options. Small towns remember things, and Sarah had left scorch marks all over hers. So she did something her stepmother was proud of her for and praised her for. She announced that she was joining the military. A fresh start, a reset button, a whole new set of people who had no idea who she was or what she may have already done. Sarah enlisted in the Army and became a transport truck driver, a job that sent her thousands of miles away to Alaska, far from Missouri and far from the wreckage of her past relationships and far from anyone who knew exactly what she might be capable of. And that's where she met the man she would take as her third husband, a young soldier, younger than Sarah, and someone who fell for Sarah's gentle, nurturing persona, the sweet Sarah that people always described meeting at first, someone who seemed to enjoy being doted on, someone Sarah may have believed would be easy to shape and easy to control. His name was Christopher Donahue.
No relation to Phil.
And not long after their relationship began, reports say Sarah became pregnant with Donahue's child. Now, could this have been the result of reckless, passionate young love? Absolutely. Or could it have been a calculated move by Sarah? Also, absolutely. We'll never know. But we do know this. Once Sarah was carrying his child, Donahue gave her his last name. And for a brief moment, from the outside it looked like things were finally stabilizing for Sarah. But for Sarah Hartsfield, peace is usually just the quiet before the next storm. From 1999 until 2017, Sarah and Chris Donahue built what looked like from the outside a stable and thriving family. Sarah left active duty, and their first daughter was born, and then a son, and then 2 more daughters. 4 beautiful children, a picture-perfect military household, a family that was well-liked in their community. Children who would, decades later, testify in court against their mother. And one of those children shared a memory that still haunts her, a memory burned so deeply into her mind that she can recall the scene in vivid detail. According to her oldest daughter, Sarah called her former foster mother one day with shocking news. Her biological father, the same man that Sarah said had horrifically abused her, the man she claimed had stolen her innocence, was dying, painfully and slowly, and he had nowhere to go. And Sarah announced that she planned to bring him into her home to care for him herself in his final months.
Give him a little special care.
Oh, she's about to. Her foster mother was stunned. Why would she bring her abuser into her home?
Oh, I know why.
Why show mercy to someone that had caused her so much devastation? And that's where her daughter's memory comes in. She says she remembers her grandfather at their house, and she remembers watching her grandfather die. She says she saw Sarah give him his liquid medication, and he started coughing almost immediately afterward, and then he grabbed his chest, and he died. To a child, it was a shocking and traumatic moment, one that never made sense to her. But as an adult, she has wondered aloud whether her mother saw those final months as an opportunity to confront the man who had traumatized her. Or perhaps, as their death certificate indicates, it truly was just natural causes. A death from an illness, just as it appeared on paper. But one thing is undeniably strange. It's not typical behavior to bring your abuser into your home to die. Not for closure, not for mercy, not for anything. And this strange and unsettling episode came just before another major shift in Sarah's life. Because at some point, after her father's death, Sarah re-entered active duty. Both she and Chris deployed to Iraq. Sarah now working in military intelligence and holding a top-secret clearance. Their 4 children were sent to stay with relatives while both parents served overseas for nearly a year. But when Sarah and Chris came home, something shifted. According to her 2 oldest children, their mother's personality had changed dramatically. They described Sarah as explosive, prone to sudden rages, and terrifyingly unpredictable. Her son recalled beatings so severe that he at one point missed an entire week of school so the bruises could fade enough to not arouse suspicion. Her oldest daughter would later tell interviewers the same story, except with one chilling detail. During one of those beatings, she had threatened her mother that she was going to call Child Protective Services. And Sarah's reaction was so violent and so immediate and so frightening that she never made the call, but someone did. A friend of hers allegedly reached out to CPS for help. And when they showed up, Sarah's daughter panicked, convinced that no one could save her from her mother, so she did what abused kids often do. She lied. She lied out of fear, and the abuse continued. Publicly, though, the family looked idyllic. 2 decorated veterans, 4 kids, and a custom-built home. But privately, things were unraveling, both financially and emotionally. As for Chris Donahue, the kids say that he knew about the abuse, he saw it, and at first he tried to intervene. But according to them, whenever Chris stepped in, things escalated and got so much worse that he eventually stopped trying. The household split into 2 worlds, the public life where they were respected and admired, and the private life where every member of the family walked on eggshells, terrified of Sarah's temper. And yet, in the cruelest way abuse cycles often work, not every memory was traumatic. Her children say Sarah could be incredibly loving. She would punish them violently and then comfort them tenderly. The whiplash between cruelty and affection created the emotional trap that keeps victims hoping. Maybe this time it'll be different. Maybe this time she really means it. Maybe the good version of her is the real one. But that's the thing about Sarah Hartsfield. Whichever version appeared in the moment was the one she needed to get what she wanted. Based on interviews and accounts from friends and relatives, it seems entirely possible that Sarah's deployment, combined with the financial strain of that brand new custom lakefront home, shook something loose in her. Maybe it dragged old traumas back to the surface. Maybe it cracked open wounds that she'd spent her life trying to outrun. Maybe it was simply the next link in a generational chain of abuse repeating itself just one more time. Whatever the trigger was, something had changed. Sarah, who had once been an attentive and affectionate mother, began slipping into cycles of rage, and Chris, younger than her, less experienced, and reportedly desperate to keep his family intact, did what so many partners of abusive people do. He played along, he pretended not to see the escalation, he pretended the tension wasn't rising in their home like a steam in a sealed pot. He pretended everything was fine, even as the family was already spiraling into something dangerous. The facade held just long enough to convince the outside world that the Donahues were thriving. But inside that home, the foundation was cracking. And then something happened, a tragedy, one that Sarah seemed to believe came wrapped in a shiny and seductive silver lining. In 2014, Sarah's grandmother passed away, leaving behind the kind of legacy that most families can only dream about. A home with more than 300 sprawling acres of prime farmland. And to Sarah, drowning in debt from that custom lakefront home, this looked like possible salvation, a bailout, the perfect solution to all the financial holes that she and Chris had dug for themselves. So she packed up the entire family and headed to her grandmother's funeral, staying with her brother Cody, the sibling who had spent years caring for that grandmother, running the farm, tending the land, and handling all of the responsibilities that Sarah had long since abandoned. And then she found out the truth. The will had left everything to Cody. Cody who had been there, Cody who had done the work, Cody who had earned it. Sarah hadn't been a part of that life in years, but she decided that she was entitled to it anyway. She erupted, exploding in a rage so intense that Cody's wife later said she had never seen anything like it. Sarah swore up and down that she was going to contest the will, drag him through court, and carve out her share so that she could sell her part of the land to pay off her enormous mortgage. The argument spiraled into a full-blown screaming match, and eventually Sarah stormed out. But she didn't stay gone. Because people like Sarah Hartsfield never really leave a grievance behind, they always circle back. And what happened next pushed the already fractured family into even darker territory. Because when Sarah came back, she came back with a U-Haul. Cody, still grieving his grandmother for whom he had cared and exhausted by his sister's volatility, told his wife, just let her take whatever she wants. He hoped that giving Sarah free rein to pick through the house might finally placate her and might stop her screaming and might avoid another war exploding in the middle of their mourning. But Sarah's kids remember that day. They remember their mother sitting in the living room with a laptop open, looking up the resale value of every single item that she instructed the kids to haul out to the U-Haul. Furniture they didn't need, decor they had no room for, items her oldest daughter said made absolutely no sense to take. But to Sarah, this wasn't about practicality. This was a mission, a crusade. She told her children that her grandmother was the only person in her biological family who ever truly loved her, which is interesting. Because Cody had just opened his home to her. He had fed her, gave her a place to sleep, let her roam freely through the belongings of the grandmother he had cared for while Sarah was living thousands of miles away.
Gave her a bowl of kibble.
That's what she deserved. But in Sarah's mind, that wasn't love. Presence wasn't love. Labor wasn't love. Sacrifice wasn't love. Apparently, love could be resurrected from a long, neglected relationship the moment the scent of inheritance money drifted through the air. At least, that's how Sarah behaved. And Sarah needed somewhere to stash all of those newly inherited treasures she fully intended to sell. Luckily for her, at the funeral she had reconnected with an old high school classmate, Brian Altus, a man who would, decades later, recall the encounter with something between regret and disbelief. But back then Brian was thrilled to help the still beautiful woman who was painting herself as the innocent victim of a cruel family feud. And he offered to let her store the furniture in his garage, and Sarah took him up on that offer. And that wasn't all she took him up on. According to Brian, that favor, that simple garage space, somehow morphed into a full-blown, torrid affair. Sarah told him she and Chris were headed for divorce. And Brian, like so many people who fell into Sarah's orbit, believed every word that fell out of her mouth. He admits now he was infatuated. He was hooked. He didn't stand a chance. But here's the thing. The fact that Sarah picked up a lover at her grandmother's funeral wasn't the wildest part of that trip. Emptying Cody's house of furniture wasn't the wildest part either. No. The most shocking part? Well, buckle up. The very night Sarah hauled every valuable item that she could pry from Cody's home, tragedy struck. Cody's nephew, who was spending the night at his house, had fallen asleep on the living room couch. Cody and his wife were already in bed. Somewhere in the early morning hours, Cody woke up choking on smoke, flames crawling through the house at terrifying speed. Cody bolted from the bed, trying desperately to reach the child, but the fire was already roaring. Panicked, he sprinted to his brother's nearby home, and together they managed a miracle, pulling the boy from the burning house before firefighters arrived. He was rushed to the hospital with severe smoke inhalation, but he was alive, and he would survive. But it had nearly cost him his life. And Cody knew exactly who he believed had tried to take it. The next morning, he called Sarah. He told her, "Your plan didn't work. I'm alive." And he told her about the boy who had been badly hurt. But Sarah's response? It wasn't shock or horror, not even curiosity about the fire. She asked, "Wait, why was that boy there?" No concern, no remorse. Just irritation that her alleged target was not alone in the home. Investigators came, of course, and they did an investigation, or what appeared to pass for one. And they told the family that they couldn't determine whether the fire was arson. But there was something that they couldn't just explain away. The fire had started at a window that was surrounded outside by a very thick stand of poison ivy. And a few days later, when investigators questioned Sarah, they couldn't help but notice. Her face was covered in poison ivy rash. Still, they said they didn't have enough evidence to charge her, and the fire was labeled undetermined. And Sarah went right back to her double life, devoted army wife and mother on one hand, and on the other, a clandestine lover of Brian Altus. A man who was about to learn one of the hardest lessons of his life, that loving Sarah Hartsfield was a dangerous game, and the house always won. And we'll tell you exactly how he learned that lesson next week in part 3 of Burn, Marry, Kill, The Wicked Web of Sarah Hartsfield.
What have you done? So you have done something.
I mean, not intentionally.
You did something. Why twist when you can pry?
Where?
Well, this will be a fun episode, won't it?
You know, you need to cut the story off in a place that makes sense.
It just didn't have any foreskin.
It didn't have enough foreskin for me to make it any shorter. I had too much foreskin. I'm not really sure how to finish this analogy. Am I getting too many? Oh, what a wicked and tangled web Sarah Hartsfield wove.
Oh, what a wicked dog you are. Shoosh. You're gonna have to come up with a healthier way to deal with your anxieties.
You're gonna have to shut up and lay down. You've already been in trouble today. No. You're all clean. Just lay down and go to sleep. Come lick your balls. That's better. Your balls that aren't there.
9.5.
A streak is something dark enough that in hindsight, everyone recognized it for what it was.
A skid mark. Oh man. Dark streak in hindsight. Come on.
You're right. I see it now. Go upstairs and get your bone.
That's clearly a command we've worked on.
I'm trying to send it to him telepathically. It's not working because I don't think he's telepathic.
Psychopathic. This episode is brought to you by my rapidly rising blood pressure.
Poor unfortunate soul. His mommy's cruel. Locked him up. Gave him a bath.
My ass isn't getting any younger.
And by multiple accounts, violently.
That was pretty violent.
My tongue feels like it's glue all of a sudden.
Can you call it beer if there's no hops? I don't have anxiety. I just have potential burning wrath, which should give other things anxiety. He has to charge in the sun, I think.
Yeah, he does seem to be solar powered, which is good because that means he sleeps at night now, unlike when he was a puppy. And nighttime was prime shoe-eating weather.
Sometimes it's sunny, sometimes it's rain. But this is shoe-eating weather.
Sarah fell pregnant with Donahue's child.
Fell pregnant? That sounds dismal. When she fell pregnant. Hold on. Look at this. Is that what we say? She fell pregnant?
Should I say became pregnant?
Fell pregnant sounds like you got a disease.
Okay.
Doesn't it? The Moyle was going to get accused of a war crime.
Are you dating a Sarah Hartsfield? Take this quick quiz to find out. Did they cheat on their spouse? Did they cheat on their second spouse? Do they collect spouses the way some people collect Funko Pops? Has your car's gas tank mysteriously developed a detergent allergy? Has a mysterious fire broken out suspiciously close to the place they just stormed out of? If you answered yes to any of these, congratulations. You might be living inside a red flag factory. If you answered yes to all of these, run. This has been your Crime to Burn PSA. You deserve a partner, not a plot twist.
All my exes are crazy, except the ones who died mysteriously. The Red Flag Detector 3000 will alert you with these 3 settings. Mild concern. Beep, beep. Major concern. Beep, beep, beep. What the f***? How am I supposed to make a lowercase and uppercase beeping different?
I don't know. That's why I was laughing.
Major concern. Beep, beep, beep. Run, baby, run. Screaming fire alarm in parentheses. How am I supposed to enunciate this? Run, baby, run. Run. What the f***, man? Run, baby, run. This is the episode that some people will be watching because they saw us in the paper.
I know. It's so exciting. Our local newspaper is doing a story about Crime to Burn. I don't feel like I can tell people what our local newspaper is because I don't want them to triangulate our location.
I heard booby traps were illegal. Yeah, this is the only place I saw that checked all of my boxes.
You check all my boxes. I just had a thought and it escaped.
This Thanksgiving, remember, somebody in your house has been cooking for about 37 hours straight. They are being held upright by only caffeine, fumes, and spite. Respect that. You need to back slowly out of the blast radius and offer to do dishes later. That is your role. Play it well. Also, the oven is full, the fridge is full, everyone is emotionally full. Proceed accordingly. And if the conversation starts drifting towards politics, the economy, that one cousin's new pyramid-based business venture, simply deploy the emergency phrase, "Who wants pie?" This resets the room. From all of us here at the Department of Seasonal Sanity, eat something green if you see it. Drink water like it's contraband. And try not to burn anything you can't explain to your insurance company. Happy Thanksgiving. Stay grateful, stay safe, and stay away from thy kitchen.
I'm grateful for you. And I'm grateful for our listeners and for all of the 5-star ratings they're going to leave us this week since we asked so nicely.
I can't wait.
Thus concludes today's descent into chaos.
Happy Thanksgiving from our family to yours.
Crime to Burn is a production of Crime to Burn, LLC, where we light fires in your brain and not your buildings. All rights reserved. Still spiritually parched after this episode? It's okay, Steve believes in cross-pollination. Here's a trailer for a show we think deserves to infiltrate your ear holes, in a good way. Don't forget to leave a 5-star review before you go. Steve is watching.
It drives me crazy thinking about her bones, laying out somewhere and just being by herself.
We took a nap in the van, and she got up, wanted to go in the mall, and she went in supposedly, and I fell back asleep for a while and woke up and went in and looked for her. I made a mistake by letting her go in the mall. I shouldn't have done that.
This season, on Missing in Hushtown Season 2, Bethany Markowski.
I still asked one of our CID people about and their response, but they assured me that not one time was she seen on any video going inside that mall.
Bethany Leanne Markowski was never seen entering the mall, walking through the mall, or exiting the mall.
Number one, the most important thing to me is to find out what happened to Bethany.
It's time to find Bethany, let her rest, and just know the truth.
Bethany has paid the ultimate price. And nobody can convince me that he didn't have anything to do with it.
And if I make people mad, I don't care, because the ultimate goal is to find Bethany.
Are we ever going to know what happened? I know Bethany is not the most famous missing person. She is to me. And I know she's not the most important person in the world. She's me.
You are now a part of Bethany's brigade. Let's go.
Missing in Hushtown Season 2 is executive produced in partnership by Fire Eyes Media LLC's Jules Thorpe and Jen Rivera, as well as Momcast Productions' Rachel Holloway and Heather Northcraft.